Welcome to another episode of the AI Forecast, a weekly podcast sponsored by Cloudera that explores the past, the present, and the future of enterprise AI. Well, today we'll hear the perspective of one of the top female leaders in the tech and AI industry on the stories and strategies that informed her leadership style and their approach to building a diverse, engaged, and productive team. Our guest today is Kari Briski. She's got decades of experience bringing sophisticated products to market. Today, you'll find her as VP of Generative AI Software and Product Management at NVIDIA, where she oversees the strategy, the roadmaps, and requirements for NVIDIA's AI software products, delivering some world-class solutions that enable customers to create next-gen AI applications. Welcome to the show, Kari.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Where do we find you today? Where are you based?
Headquarters, which is in Santa Clara, California. San Jose.
There we go. A lovely part of the world. I miss the Bay Area. Before we get into looking at your career and talking a bit about your perspective on, I guess tapping into the power of diverse and inclusive teams, sharing some of your leadership lessons, we do a little thing at the beginning of each show we call the Fast Four. Sometimes it's not so fast, depending on the length of people's answers. We'll see how we go. Are you ready to play the game?
I'm always ready. Bring it on.
I love it. All right. First question I actually ask everyone I meet, what would people say is your superpower? People who know you best.
Well, so I actually asked my 11-year-old, and she told me it was getting through the day, which made me laugh.
I'm guessing Mum's got a big day. That's a great superpower. Persistence, grit.
Always, but I would say for myself, it's looking around the corner, and I think my team too. I'm always asking, what's next? What aren't we seeing? Where can we go with our products? And then what I call GSD, like get stuff done to get around the corner, like have that vision and kind of look around, kind of poke holes and then get around the corner.
It is that fine balance too, isn't it? Because you can get overly enamored of the future and to your point, forgetting about the GSD and saying, you know what, now we've got to actually build the vision or it's just a hallucination.
That's right.
I love it. All right. Next question. The most impactful technology of all time.
So I have like this recursive rabbit hole brain. And so when I think about that, I'm like AI because it's so important to me. But then I'd be like, the internet was so important to me growing up as like a little girl in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and like immediately had information at her hands. And so there was so much more to the world. And so I'm like, but you couldn't have the internet without the computer. So definitely the computer is the most important. And then my brain just goes, I'm like, maybe it's the wheel.
Where did you settle in the end?
I would have to say the computer, because without the computer, there's no internet. Without data and computing, there wouldn't be AI. So I'm just gonna go with computer.
I love it. I thought you were going to go all the way back to recombinant DNA. You're like, well, without DNA, where would we be? All right. Last but not least. This question might need a little bit of explanation, but the podcast is about AI and data. And one of the things I learned, and it took me a while to reflect on it when I was mentoring folks, is there's sort of a couple of hacks that got me through my executive career and it related to my relationship with data. And for me, it's things like triangulation. It's one of my big things. Never trust the first bit of data you get. Try and find two or three others. And it becomes, as a leader, it becomes so subconscious you don't even notice it's there, and it takes mentoring to maybe bring it to light. So what are some of the best practices you've learned as an executive or just someone working with data?
Always having an evaluation methodology for that data set that comes in, because even if in this day and age there's a lot of data vendors, and if you're purchasing data, it doesn't actually mean just because you bought it it's high quality. So even when you pull that data into your system, you've got to test and validate that and do quality control on that data as well. So I think it's just getting to high quality data, even if it's smaller than you originally thought. It's that seed that you can grow from.
So let's talk a little bit about your career journey. What drew you into the field? Have you always been interested in technology?
Yeah, I have always been interested in technology. My mother was a night school teacher, so she taught computer programming, and I would, she would have those modems where I'd sit in front of the TV, and the TV was a big blue screen, and she would be cooking dinner, and like her students could ask questions, and so I'd be saying like, "Mom, someone's asking a question," and like she's like, "Well, type this answer back." So I've always been interested in technology. I think that I took my first logic class and I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense. Like I love logic. I mean, it's so clear.
George Bull, you're amazing.
Yes. And then my university, which I went to the University of Pittsburgh, Pitt, and we had a VLSI design course, and I just became enamored with VLSI design and semiconductors. So my first job right out of college was actually writing software for proprietary chip design tools for IBM. And so I've always kind of been in the chip semiconductor world. And then my career sort of grew through IBM of, kind of hitting a point in my career where you need to go to senior technical staff member or go sort of business route for leaders. And so I chose the business route with product management and just kind of growing my path through product, but always staying close to the technology and always learning. So I think that's been my career path, is just staying close to the technology, but I love to build, I love to create new things, and I think that's what's really great about being in product.
Let's talk a little bit about how you approach your work as an executive. So whether it's your time at NVIDIA or prior to that. So decision making is a big one, right? The decisions you make and the criteria by which you prosecute those decisions that I think informs a lot of our success. So first question about your decision making style. What are some of the most impactful decisions you think you've made, and how have they not only just shaped your career but informed your approach to, say, risk taking and decision making as you've progressed?
I think that for me, it's about data and intuition. So to your point of there's a little bit of vision, but there's also trusting the data and the sort of assumption modeling that you've made, and then always checking those assumptions. Are they to be true? What do I need to change about this model, and how do we go attack it? And what do I mean by that? So in a real example, I think I would say back in 2016, 2017, there were a lot of our customers who were saying they would never need a GPU for inference, right? And just, when I was sitting here looking at the data, that I'm looking at the models that researchers are working on, I knew it was going beyond compute, it was going to go burst out beyond computer vision. I was just looking at the workloads, and I inherently believe that we need better inference serving solutions just because we were going to need to handle this load. And so I think it's just kind of, again, looking for early indicators of future success, trusting that data, always testing your assumptions, but then believing in it and carrying it through. And then if you are wrong, then pivot. I've always learned to pivot when I find out I'm wrong, but just really definitely trusting in yourself and the data.
Let's talk about roadblocks. And so when you do face a roadblock or a barrier, especially something that you care deeply about, you've got that vision, you buy into it, and you need to be a little bit crazy sometimes to push through those early stages where everyone else is looking at you going, what do you mean we'll put GPUs in cars, for example? How do you navigate that I think Duckworth would call it grit, right? Where does that come from?
Oh man, I've had such long conversations about grit. I don't think that was my answer, though. I could talk about that for an hour for another time. But so what when I hit building blocks, I think, yes, grit and tenacity, because you believe, again, just as I was explaining, because you believe in it, but taking small steps along the way, because you're not just going to solve the whole thing one at a time. So you hit a roadblock, kind of how can you be like water? How can I flow around it, right? And so to flow around it, I've got to see what are my options, what's going to get me the most success immediately, to get data back so that I can use that data to then make another decision point. And so anytime you have this simulation of there's multiple paths that I could go down now, what's the right path to go down? And so, when I go down that path, do I need to backtrack and now go back down, take a left instead of a right in my decision process? So I think that when you hit a roadblock, A, don't get discouraged. B, step back and kind of look at the picture, the large picture, and then C, take small steps along the way to kind of go around it. Because the roadblock could be there for a really good reason, or it's either a really good reason or a really bad reason. And either way, you need to learn from it and move on. So I think that's the biggest thing too, is just learning from it and still moving forward. Some people just take no for an answer, oh yeah, I guess we can't do it. But again, you just kind of have to have that, the proof and the data, the people who are transparent about it, so people believe that you have the right path forward, and that if the path forward isn't known, that they are there with you to build the road. So if it's a complete forest, you're going to have to chop down some trees, you're going to have to smooth out the dirt, and eventually pave the way, but it's going to be a bit bumpy along the way. But again, you've got to be able to make those steps of here's how we're going to get through the forest, instead of we're just going to randomly everyone hack around and I'll meet you on the other side, that we're going to build the road together.
So let's talk to that notion, because I guess implicit in that is this notion of diversity. And you've submitted it into evidence in part because you've just said there are some people who will take no for an answer, and there are some people who are stubborn and despite the data telling them that they should stop, will continue to plow ahead. But the argument, I guess, that gets made is that having a monoculture where you've got one type or the other is not healthy either. Having a balance is great. How have you found? What's your approach, I guess, to thinking about building teams, and what role does consciously or subconsciously does diversity play in that for you?
I would like to say it's subconscious, but I am pretty proud of the diversity of my team, both just from all aspects, not just women and men, but just diverse backgrounds and coming from parts of the world. And I think, but I don't know that I did that on purpose. It was just very interesting. I don't think I did, but I think it was always looking for the right person for the role. And so my team spans, product and data strategy and technical marketing. So there's engineering on my team who are writing Jupyter notebooks and figuring out some of if the research can be applied to products. And so I think it's always having this team of diverse job roles as well, because we're all learning from each other, and we literally we are in it day to day together. And I think one is having daily syncs. You can't just go off and try and all solve problems in a vacuum and come back and hope that it works. So it's really a collaborative environment. So you're always collaborating, you're always learning from each other, you're always sharing your results, because it's not that information is power, it's that information is sharing. And so when everybody is learning what you've learned along the way, then kind of like the rising tide lifts all boats. And we literally have a kind of a readout of what everyone's learned at least once a week. And then we're always kind of pulling on that thread throughout the week as well, with a common goal in mind. And so I think that, I know I kind of went back to the work, but again, that's where it is. It's, what is the mission and who is the team that can get it done? And so, we have a team that went off and made a behavior guide for guiding principles for large language models. And so that was a really unique team, because they have to go out and have to have principles when going to acquire data. And when you apply that data to our models, then our models will behave a particular way when we're doing alignment. And so you can imagine that team kind of thinks about problems a little bit differently than the team that's just, trying to apply reduced precision quantization techniques on models for inference. And so I think when we all appreciate and learn from each other, the whole picture comes together.
Absolutely. So I experienced a frustration times when I think to myself, particularly Silicon Valley, where how do I put this politely, is it can sometimes feel like there's a high degree of similarity amongst the folks. Like a lot of the folks have almost a carbon copy background, like they're engineers that come through the ranks, and trying to bring that different perspective into a room can be challenging because it becomes self-selecting to a degree. Does that resonate with you at all? And have you found hacks that work for you to inject that bit of punk or that bit of difference into the team?
Yes, I have seen that mentality. I think I learned my lesson, though. I think it was like right when I had joined NVIDIA, and I was kind of pulling the thread about training in reduced precision, so training in FP16 or mixed precision rather than FP floating point 32. And it was kind of like I had some researchers tell me, well, if you don't know how to do it, then you shouldn't be using the technology, is basically what the theory was. Like, anyone who's a deep learning researcher would know how to do it. Well, it turned out that a lot of freaking deep learning researchers didn't know how to cast down to FP16 and still maintain the accuracy of their model for convergence. And we saw it in sort of the pushback from people purchasing our chips, like, oh, you're not getting the performance speed up because I can't even use FP16. I was so mad at myself that I didn't follow my intuition and my guts that first time around. And we later went into to go on to implement what's called automatic mixed precision, like built it into the software so that no one had to do this kind of research. And so I think that I learned my lesson of following my gut and speaking up for myself. And because if I have the question, your teachers tell you this too when you're a kid, when you have that question, others have the same question. And so unless you can explain it to everybody, then you're not really going to be able to succeed. If people don't understand the value right out of the gate, then it's not going to succeed. And so it has to be more than a slideware. It has to be more than a promise. You actually have to be able to do it. And so I think that that's, so once I learned my lesson, whenever I have those questions or nagging things in my brain, like again, it's kind of seeing around the corner, like, I don't know that that's actually going to work out. I don't think it means what you think it means. Being able to speak up, and when I speak up, being able to, again, go back to the data, go find some examples or samples where I can prove my intuition. And then, but you have to, it's just like such a fast-paced industry. You have to do this very fast. You have to learn how to tap into people who are actually doing the work, who are using this technology, who need the technology, who have a pain point and they're trying to get it done, and kind of like, hey, what do you think about this? What if I gave you this? Or what if I did that? Or what, not just what are your requirements? Don't tell me what to do, but what is the problem you're trying to solve? And then come back with that data really quickly. I think that helps impact decisions when you can actually, engineers are very thirsty for the use cases. They're very thirsty to understand the why. Like, they're spending their life's work building this. They want people to use it, right? And they want people to understand it and enjoy it. And so that is my job and my team's job to make sure that that happens. And so making that loop really fast is really important. And that gives you the confidence to speak up when you're in a room full of people who have very, very big opinions based on research. And research doesn't always translate to application and productive use.
I hate to go to the work-life balance conversation, but you know what? We're all entitled to lives, no matter how senior we are as executives. And finding the time, not finding, sorry, I shouldn't say that, being able to look after ourselves and our family at the same time as ensuring that we're having great and fulfilling careers. It's easy to say, but it just seems devilishly hard to do.
It's really hard to do. I think, though, that now is the time better than ever for all the, again, this, I talked about food service delivery and Amazon. For a women executive, now's never been a better time to be able to help have services that can support you in having time for your family. So, I'm not spending time at the supermarket. I'm spending time picking up my daughter and having a 20-minute conversation with her on the car home after practice. And then the food's already there when we both get there, and then the family can make dinner. But you always have to make time, and when that time has to be focused. And I think that's true for anything. That's true when you're at work, and it's true when you're at home. Because if you're doing 6 things at once, you will burn out, and then no one ever feels that they got any attention. Customers, to teams at work, and to your family. Yeah. To yourself.
That's a great point.
Even for myself, sometimes I just drive in silence in my car on my way to work. I'm just thinking.
Isn't it the best? Just quietening the noise is just so therapeutic. I forgot to ask you one of the questions in our Fast Four. What technology would you like to see AI automate for you in the future? So you've just reminded me of that.
This is a cheat, but I'm going to say everything. I think that there's...
That is a cheat. No. We talked about decision making before. You need to make a decision, Karen.
So I think personally, I'm really excited about the medical field. I think I still go to, I had to take my daughter to the doctor last week, and it's just it just kind of boggles my mind about electronic medical records and medicine, and there's just so much that can be done there. So it's kind of selfishly, I'm excited for the whole healthcare industry to be revolutionized with AI.
I love it. Sorry to bounce around, but you did remind me with that point, and it's a question I always like to hear the answer to. Can we talk about mentoring for a little bit? Because I think it's going back to this notion of trying to tap into the full 50% of the women in our society that should be participating in STEM, or at least making sure they've got a good shot at it. Number one, I guess we all talk about mentoring. I'm not sure how much time you find for it. If you do, I'm just curious, what's the one piece of advice you find yourself sort of going back to most often as you're mentoring people, assuming you've got time to do it?
I have one piece of advice I've always said, and I will continue to say it, and I think it's continued to be true all the time, is that it doesn't get any easier. It will never get any easier. It just gets harder, but you get better. And so, when you think just don't try and trick yourself, it's going to get easier, it's going to get harder. But your capacity to learn and take on more, you become a better leader, you become a better person, you are able to gain scope, then you are now able to take on more. So it might seem easier, but it's actually harder, but you're just able to do more. And so allow yourself that ability to grow and to handle more.
Is that specific to women, or is that just in general your advice to people you coach?
Well, I think it's to anybody, but
Mm.
normally, I say it to women that I mentor because just sometimes balancing work and life it can seem exasperating, and or school and sports. It's just you're always don't worry, you're going to get better. It's not going to get easier, but you are going to get better. You just have to keep at it and keep practicing it. And I think that goes back to the mentoring of you have to earn it every day. You have to come in, even as an executive, at least here, there is no, you like I am, and all executives here at NVIDIA, we are individual contributors too. It's not just
Mm.
managing, it's not, we have our own missions, the things we have to get done, the things that we have to respond to and deal with. And so I think that, if you have to have the energy, it goes back to taking care of yourself, the energy and the capacity to come in and learn every day, improve yourself every day. Like, what have you learned? What are you doing about it? What's next? And so being able to apply that to yourself is in the practice of that and the rhythm. And you might not even know it some days, but you're learning, you're interpreting, you're achieving, and you're pushing something, not just maintaining the status quo, but always kind of moving forward. And so that's kind of that growth mindset of being able to push yourself a little bit further.
And on the topic of mentoring, then you mentioned your mother before, clearly a huge influence, and having somebody who's comfortable in STEM in your world, I imagine, would have just made the whole thing seem less intimidating. Were there other mentors in your career, in your life that helped bring you to where you are, or that maybe they're still in your life?
Oh yeah, all the time. I think for me too, knowing where I came out of in my class of like having five women, I wasn't always looking for a woman mentor, to be honest. I think that I've had a lot of really fantastic male mentors, and because it's more about either our personality or what we are trying to achieve or goals in life, or they had been through that before. I just even some of my old leaders who were men that were said when I was getting married, take the time, don't think about work this week. Just be present in the day. He's like, it goes by so fast. He's like, every moment of your wedding, just be like, remember this, remember this, remember this, because the day will be over. And I got that from, a mentor at work, not necessarily like a family member or a loved one, but it's just so that even just about life or work and career, it's just, you just kind of take the pieces from wherever you can get it. Don't try and look for one person, because again, nobody's perfect. And don't try and use that one person as a model, but kind of use information from as many sources as you can get. So find the qualities in people that you admire, and then go find out what they do about that, and then apply it to yourself.
Goes back to that concept of triangulation, doesn't it? Is don't rely on a single data source.
Exactly.
As we come to a close, I suppose I wanted to just sort of talk to lessons learned and advice. So, if you're well, I don't think we're going to be hitting K to 12s with this podcast, although it'd be brilliant if we did. But let's just say we're talking to someone who's, perhaps at the late stages of their education, early stages of their career. Advice for them, thoughts that come to mind as you're thinking about this person embarking on their career?
Number one, it takes time. You don't have to be the biggest leader in the first 4 years out of college. So give yourself time, and at the same time, stick with it, right? And try and gain as many different types of experiences to grow yourself. So if you're not pushing yourself, or what's the word I'm looking for? If you feel comfortable, then you're not growing. So get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. And I think that that's another one that's especially true for women. More so, women tend to not feel uncomfortable, maybe taking a job where they feel like, I don't have that one, I have 8 out of the 10 or 9 out of the 10 bullet points for that job description. Get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Push yourself to learn that one bullet point that you don't have, or go take up a project around that so that you learn. And then I think the other thing would be, it's okay to fail, because when you fail fast, again, those are the growth moments as you learn from your mistakes very quickly. But don't be afraid to get back into it, because now you know what you did wrong, and you're not going to do that wrong again. I think those are like the the top three things. Like give yourself time, push yourself, and be able to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, I like the idea of get uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. I think one of the managing director of one of the companies that I'm involved in, he's 32, 33, and he's still very much focused on the idea that once we make this change, add this person, restructure this way, then the problems will go away, and we can just get used to running the business in a steady state. And I feel like I'm breaking his heart every time I say to him, it's like, no, the problem just moves,
Yeah,
You
exactly.
become radically successful, and then you need another warehouse or another facility, or you need to go and start in a new country, and then you need a 24/7 support line, and it's just another set of problems. But great opportunities too.
See, it's another set of problems. It doesn't get easier. You hit a
Yeah,
milestone, you get a success, and the scope grows. You just get better. You'll get better.
absolutely. And then, so that's advice for the young people out there. For those who are perhaps, mid-career and feeling like they're stuck, they've got a manager or a culture that doesn't get it, they feel like there are potentially roadblocks being erected for them, or what would you say to them?
Change. I mean, honestly, I felt that way too. I was scared to leave a company or switch a position, but I definitely looked at the road ahead of me or the people ahead of me, and I'll be very honest, it was very not diverse. And I thought to myself, I have the ability to break that ceiling, that glass ceiling, but is this something I'm passionate about that I want to do it here?
Mm.
And so, are you passionate enough about the work that you're doing to be uncomfortable, to grow, to push boundaries, to challenge people? And if you feel like you're constantly getting those roadblocks, then make a change. Someone else will value you more. You'll learn more through the process. So that's one aspect. And then the other one is really kind of reflect on yourself. Like, why are you hitting that wall? How can I improve myself? How can I take on a job? How can I learn? If I'm getting feedback that I'm not moving to the next level because of X, Y, and Z, then I want to go learn about X, Y, and Z. I want to do something with X, Y, and Z. I want to be able to take on a project and gain that experience. So just, again, it's constantly learning and pushing yourself. So either break it and make the change and don't look back and run forward, or revisit with the feedback that you got and build yourself and kind of challenge yourself to work at that next level. Don't feel like I need to have it in order to work at that next level. I always tell people, be the next band, be the place that you want to be, already act in that at that level. And then you'll be gaining that experience along the way to make yourself move. And then if you still don't move, then now you've gained the experience to cut and run and move to somebody else to succeed. But I think for most part, when you are building yourself, or your grass is greener where you water it, and you kind of improve yourself, people will appreciate and respect that, and they want you to grow with them.
What's your advice to managers, particularly, the men that are listening, about kind of things that are helpful and things that aren't?
I think don't just be a manager. I would say lead by example. Again, this kind of goes back to the point of being an individual contributor, because when you are doing it yourself and you're leading by example, then you either have empathy, because now you are going through the trenches with your team as well, and so you'll have empathy for them, or they will also respect you because of, like, you are in that with them and learning with them, or feeling what they're feeling, and you're either winning together or losing together. So I think that just be in it. Don't just be a manager.
Final question for you. I actually have so many more we could talk about grid, as you say, all day long. It'd be great to talk about that again on another episode. But what do you see as being the biggest opportunity and the most pressing challenge as we look into the AI world over the next 2, 5, 10 years?
So everyone's talking about AI, but really transitioning from legacy software applications to infused AI applications. I think the people are starting to play around with AI and POCs, but until we actually get it built in and deployed out, we just talked about where I want to see automation in healthcare. So until we actually see it come to fruition, and it might be a big bang in certain industries and areas, or it might trickle out in others. And so it's going to be a while coming, because again, as you put in safe, small AI applications, you have to start to gather data in what we call the AI data flywheel. So once you gather that data, then you can curate it and then retrain the model and then put it back out into production, and keeps getting more use cases, more involved and more integrated. And so I think that's a challenge because of the systems that have to be put in place, the AI skill up-leveling that has to happen for developers and people building at every enterprise, every company. It's not just defined now to deep learning researchers, but now it's every enterprise application developer needs to know how to infuse AI into their everyday applications. And so to me, it's that transition, the transition of from learning to building to deploying. And so really seeing everything deploy at scale is the opportunity that I'm most excited about, because I think we're at the tip of the iceberg.
I think it's a great answer. I've got to follow on with that. I imagine, like me, you spend a bit of time when you're with family, especially those out of the tech industry, I guess debunking some of their expectations about what this technology can do, and regrounding them. Where do you think we sit right now in terms of that? I guess we talk about the hype cycle, the peak of expectations, overinflated expectations. Where do you think we sit right now? How much of a gap is there between what people think will be possible and what's possible today?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. I think that if you're talking to visionaries who have seen real progress, and again, those early indicators of future success, the things that we're doing here, they have visions that they can see where it's going to take us. One time I talked to a reporter at one of our conferences, and they had never been to an AI conference before, and I was like, well, what do you think of the technology? And they said, actually, I'm really surprised how boring it is. I thought it was going to be all this cool, crazy Skynet stuff, but it's actually just solving some really simple problems. I'm like, yes, yes. And so I think it all depends on who you're talking to.
I love it. I'm very mindful of your time. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Kari.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everyone who's joined us, listening in or viewing it. And thanks to Cloudera for another episode of the AI Forecast. We'll see everyone on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in to this special edition of Cloudera's podcast series, the AI Forecast. Kari's episode is the first installment of our quarterly podcast highlighting our Women Leaders in Tech series. So if you like this episode, be sure to check back in for more. Each quarter, we'll take a break from the regularly scheduled AI programming on the podcast to direct our attention to this important topic in tech. Women Leaders in Technology is about creating meaningful connections and opportunities for women and allies in tech leadership through networking, collaboration, and support. It's also about inspiring the next generation. We'll hear from powerful visionaries at the top of their fields as they share their journeys, the lessons they've learned, and the insights gleaned from their success. If you'd like to learn more about Cloudera's Women Leaders in Technology initiative, visit the WLIT homepage on cloudera.com and make sure you join our LinkedIn community.